And we noticed that Christmas presents that we were getting for kids, of course, Christmas presents that Santa is delivering and asked us to hold for our children and others. And also, just friends in the community. We had heard 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, not to expect to get those packages.
That's why I got all my Christmas shopping done at Thanksgiving.
Everything's working. Everything's clicking. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what's happening out there, but I'm hearing it from everybody I talk to, that this, whatever the fears were about the supply chain and about people getting their presents on time, well, that doesn't appear to have materialized. Obviously, there was an intense focus by the Biden administration, by state and local officials to clear up the supply chain problem, and it appears to be working.
Yeah, they really put together a team. So despite those fears, it seems new data showing the majority of Americans will have their presents under the Christmas tree this weekend. According to shipping data company ShipMatrix, UPS and the Postal Service, meaning Santa, delivered close to 99% of packages on time between November 14th and December 11th. FedEx wasn't far behind, reportedly delivering 97% of packages on time during that same time frame. Santa, really. This comes after the White House formed a task force earlier this year to address bottlenecks at some of the country's major ports. President Biden spoke about the progress yesterday.
Earlier this fall, we heard a lot of dire warnings about supply chain problems leading to a crisis around the holidays. The much predicted crisis didn't occur. Packages are moving. Gifts are being delivered. Shelves are not empty.
You know, it was, Jonathan, about a month ago, we were talking about inflation and the supply chain crisis. It was a massive crisis. I'm not exactly sure what everybody's done over the past month, but whatever they have done, as we won't call it a Christmas miracle, but we will say it's a heck of a turnaround from what most of America was expecting 1 or 2 months ago. And let's just be honest about it. What Republicans seem to be gloating about 1 or 2 months ago, blaming Joe Biden, despite the fact that we, of course, had these supply chain problems going all the way back into the Trump administration.
Yeah, Jen Psaki took the briefing room podium yesterday and joked that the White House saved Christmas. And certainly they do deserve some
Put it on a bumper sticker.
Yes,
Republicans would put it on a bumper sticker. The White House should put this on the White House that saved Christmas. If you don't think Republicans wouldn't do that, you don't know Republicans.
Yeah, well, Democrats are too often accused of participating in the war on Christmas, and now this time they've saved it. It has been a White House, and the president took a frankly well-deserved victory lap on this yesterday and all over Twitter because of some of the efforts they did to help ease these supply chain issues, keeping ports open 24/7, working closely with shipping companies, and they deserve credit too. And there's been good reporting the last day or so about this, about how a lot of the logistics companies have really stepped up with more staffing and better plans to make sure those gifts got out on time. And look, inflation still remains a concern, and not that the supply chain issues are totally resolved, but at least it's not the crisis that we all thought it was going to be with Christmas here. And to be clear, let's rewind 6 weeks ago. We had this conversation on the show. White House aides then were really concerned about this, that they thought they would be blamed if there weren't presents under the tree. The White House that lost Christmas, but now they can say they are the one they believe that saved it.
Right. I mean, again, a Republican administration would say it. Why wouldn't they? Donald Trump would be like, Christmas, it was going to be destroyed, and I saved it better than anybody's ever saved Christmas. They tell me this is going to be the greatest Christmas in 4,000 years.
Okay, well,
would say it. Never mind, he's about 2,000 years off about how long there have been Christmases. But that said, I'm seeing these fascinating numbers, Sam, and I'm sure you guys have written about it on, like, how's the economy doing? And Republicans you saw something this morning that Republicans are saying the economy is doing worse than it was during the Great Recession. Despite incredible growth, despite more available jobs ever than any time in history, you can go down a list of factors where the economy is doing extraordinarily well. And of course, there's the battle over inflation that is going to continue most likely over the next 6 months or so. But what I love in these surveys is they go, how's the economy doing? And, 70% of Republicans say it's the worst ever. How are you doing personally, economically? About 70% of Republicans say, hey, I'm doing better than I've ever done before. So it doesn't line up. Even the answer to that question has started to elicit stupid responses from people just based on their political ideology, not based on reality. So I'm not even sure we can even take much heed in those numbers anymore.
Oh, yeah, those numbers have become completely filtered through partisan lenses. Absolutely. So you have an economy right now that I think by objective metrics is doing pretty well, right? I mean, we've created millions of jobs. Our economic growth outpaces that of every other industrialized nation that is recovering from the pandemic. Objectively, people's wages are going up. You can see just even anecdotally through these worker strikes, through various news stories about workers who are actually organizing for higher wages, things that just haven't happened in decades. But on the flip side, we do have inflation. We have higher costs for goods. We had, up until recently, a fairly steady stream of increased costs in gasoline. And those have either completely overwhelmed the good news or have been used by Biden's critics to paint the economy as in a horrible state. And I think the White House the trick that's confronting the White House right now is how do you take this objectively good economic recovery compared to every other nation and sell it to the American people whereby they feel it more. And the trick that they have, which has confronted prior administrations, as you know, Joe, is there's a danger. Trump didn't care about this because he just, as you noted, perhaps in a slightly different Trump voice, he didn't care. He would trumpet every economic recovery and say this was the greatest thing ever. But there is a danger of saying, hey, things are going really well to the American public when they don't necessarily feel it. And so the Biden administration is trying to say, hey, look, things are going really well, where someone may be filling up their glass and saying, whoa, this is $10 more to fill up my tank than it used to be.
Now, Jonathan, we commented during the Trump administration how Donald Trump would say things were going great regardless, and Barack Obama was always afraid to go out there and say when things were going great because he always worried. The professor in him was going, but there's some people who may be languishing behind because of this factor or that factor. That did not serve him politically. It didn't serve the Democratic Party politically. I would suspect Joe Biden to do more of what we've seen over the past 4 years. If you have the fastest wage growth in history, or if you have some of the strongest growth in GDP that we've had in decades, if you have great unemployment numbers, if you have more job openings than ever in history, if Republicans were talking about how the supply chain was going to ruin Christmas and it ended up that it didn't because of what you did, that's just something Democrats are going to have to learn how to message. And you message it by talking about the great things that have happened under your watch and do it unapologetically. Democrats, they like to apologize or put caveats on the end of bumper stickers, It just doesn't, you didn't see Make America Great Again, asterisk. And by this, what we're really trying to say is that doesn't work that way.
Joe, I can't believe you would suggest that Donald Trump would exaggerate his accomplishments.
Yeah.
Never he wouldn't do
Always.
that. No, but you're right. Democrats sometimes are bad at winning. They're bad at the messaging, for all the reasons you just outlined. And I think this White House has struggled at that at times with some of the messaging. That they are, we know they got thrown off their game a little bit this past summer. Sort of they hit a slump, beginning with Afghanistan, the rise of Delta, and then we've seen the inflation and so on this fall, and then the back and forth with the legislative agenda. But they've also had real accomplishments as this year draws to a close. The distribution of the vaccine, the COVID relief bill, the bipartisan infrastructure plan, just sort of returning a sense of normalcy to Washington and the country after 4 tumultuous years. Now, the supply chain. So this is something that aides have told me they want to ramp up. They know going into 2022, and there are still real hurdles ahead, no doubt, including what they're going to do on voting rights. But they feel like they've got a good story to tell. They need to do a better job of telling it as they head into the midterms. And they still hope there could be a confluence of good news come spring, summer, that hopefully the virus cases will have really gone down by then. Hopefully, inflation will have started to fade by then. And they hope that the Build Back Better Act in some form is passed by then. And Americans will feel the real-world benefits of both that and the infrastructure program. And that suddenly, in the stretch run before the midterms, would give them something really nice to run on. They need to be able to sell it better. They know that.
Yeah, well, you know, we were talking about the supply chain, inflation, and COVID. We were saying that we expected most of that to burn out by next year. The supply chain, check. It seems to be in pretty darn good shape for Christmas. Inflation at some point, I still believe will burn out by at least the middle of next year. And we'll see what happens as we move through COVID. There may be future variants, but again, we're learning to live with it. New York City is open for business. The mayor's still talking about actually having New Year's Eve in Times Square. Again, far different than what happened in 2020. And the Democrats too. I love that expression. The Democrats are bad at winning. And to prove that, we have a former Republican now cheering for Democrats, David Frum, who has an op-ed today talking about all the successes, all the great things Joe Biden has accomplished this year, and talks about how they need to get that message out instead of just focusing on one bill that didn't pass this year. And we'll have that morning show.
Just for the record, before we go to break, really quick, Joe Biden, when he was doing the supply chain update yesterday, was bragging on all the accomplishments of this administration and the state of the economy. And he was doing it in, you know, a pretty, I think, forward way. It wasn't subtle. He wasn't feeling, you know, what you all describe. He was very proud of the accomplishments. We can play some of that later if you'd like. He was extremely forward pushing on it, saying that we are headed in the right direction, and he was taking the credit, and his staff and his cabinet. Still ahead on Morning Joe, we'll talk to D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser about the strict new vaccine requirements that will soon go into effect there. Plus, the committee investigating the January 6th attack now wants to talk to one of Donald Trump's closest allies, Congressman Jim Jordan. The only question here is, what happens when he refuses to cooperate?
Wait a second. You got Proud Boys that are cooperating, but Jim Jordan won't?
That seems upside down to me.
I don't understand that.
Plus, the viral moment from Wheel of Fortune that has fans upset and a car company stepping up. We'll explain. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.